Hey, everybody. Now, as I'm sure you already know, regardless of whether you're an apprentice writer or a literary giant, whenever you write an essay, you always begin with an introduction. And you may have been taught that in academic essays, the introduction will always be one paragraph with three main components. You'll begin with a hook that introduces your issue in an attention grabbing way. You'll provide some context or background detail on the issue. And then, of course, you'll present your thesis, your argument on the issue. Now, all three pieces are essential to an introduction, but there's a right way and a wrong way to go about writing these sections. Now, remember, the introduction paragraph is your first real chance to gain your reader's interest. And to do this, we need to make sure that our introductions pass what I call the eavesdrop test. It works like this. Imagine you're on the subway. Two people next to you are talking. Given the social conventions of the commons today, you get to decide if you want to ignore them or to eavesdrop on their conversation, which goes like this.
Did you know that every year, billions of animals are raised and slaughtered for food?
Yes, Pete. As the world's population grows, so does the demand for meat, leading to unsustainable farming practices that pollute ecosystems, increase greenhouse gas emissions, and drive species extinction.
Yes, and beyond environmental harm, evidence has shown that meat-heavy diets are linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer.
Given these concerns, people should stop eating meat due to its detrimental effects on the planet, human health, and animal welfare.
Hmm.
Now, you might care about the issue they're discussing, but the way they're discussing it is not very engaging. There are thousands of podcasts on your phone that would have much more interesting things to say about the issue. Now, it's the same if this conversation were an essay introduction, which structurally it kind of is. It starts with a hook, it provides context, background info on the issue, and it ends by presenting a main argument with a roadmap of its supporting points. So, if it's doing what it's supposed to do, what makes it so boring? Well, the hook to begin with is pretty general. There are a few different hook strategies we can use in academic essays. We can cite statistics or an interesting fact. We could pose an intriguing question or a controversial quote. We could also start with an anecdote, a definition, all sorts of things we could do. Right now, our hook is doing double duty as a statistic within a question. But the statistic is a little vague, and the question is boring because it invites only a yes or no answer. It doesn't require the reader to reflect on the issue. My favorite hook technique isn't usually covered in writing composition courses, but it is very effective. I like to start my essays with a surprise. That is, we set up certain expectations about the essay in one or two sentences, and then we surprise the reader by turning things in a new direction. Here's an example I've taken from Tad Friend in an essay he wrote for The New Yorker. He begins his essay by saying, "Cows are easy to love. Their eyes are a liquid brown, their noses inquisitive, their udders homely. Small children thrill to their moo. Most people like them even better dead. Americans eat 3 hamburgers a week, so serving beef at your cookout is as patriotic as buying a gun." All right, with that as my example, I'm going to try my own more engaging surprise hook for this essay. I'm going to start by saying, it was about 10,500 years ago that we, as a human species, really messed things up. We abandoned our nomadic lifestyles for the proto-comforts of home, but even worse, we brought the cow on board, domesticating cattle for the first time. Now, my language here is maybe a little too colloquial or informal for some professors, those of the elbow-patched set, but it does make my essay stand out right away. I've got a historical fact about the beginning of human agriculture, but I also try to surprise the reader with the unexpected suggestion that cattle farming was a huge mistake. Now, since my issue is about eating meat, I need to provide some context, some background info on the issue. Again, though, what I have now is a bit dry. and it doesn't flow very well from my hook. So let me revise. Since then, bovine meat has become a dietary staple across the world. As our global population continues to grow at alarming rates, so does the demand for meat, leading to unethical and unsustainable farming practices that treat animals poorly while polluting ecosystems and increasing greenhouse gas emissions. Beyond environmental harm, evidence has also shown that meat heavy diets are linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Now, I've changed this a bit and I could work more on the style here, that's true, but my context is basically doing what I need it to do. It's providing a general overview on the issue that my thesis will summarize and that my body paragraphs will argue in detail. I'm being careful not to get carried away with my background info because I don't want to overwhelm the reader. My job here is to introduce, not to support my arguments. That I'll do in the body paragraphs. Rather than cite any sources here, again, I'm just providing enough information so that my reader can understand and make a somewhat informed opinion on my thesis when it arrives at the end of the paragraph. And while the content and form of a context section will change depending on the type of essay or the class for which you're writing, its purpose in this regard is consistent. We've already looked at thesis writing in another video, and we can see that this thesis is following that standard roadmap type. But one common misconception about thesis statements that's worth noting here is that your job in crafting a thesis is not to make the reader agree with your argument. It's to make the reader want to hear you out. Even at the end of the essay, after I presented all my convincing and well-researched evidence to support my thesis, it's fine if my reader doesn't agree with me. Persuasion is important, but not as important as inspiration, inspiring the reader to see an issue from another perspective. And the first step to ensuring your success at this is getting your reader to take the earbuds out of her ears and lean in a little closer to hear what exactly you have to say. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.